Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skoskauspo.
Well, gentlemen, it is August. We flipped the calendar, and it is now like it's in sight. We're playing a game this
5x5, baby.
Summer practice is not even summer practice. Practice has started, right? Eventually, we'll start getting some news and notes from practice. Hopefully, we'll obviously have to wait and see what happens. And as we turn the calendar into August, we're also entering the part of the schedule into conference play, and we will kick off conference play this year with a matchup against longtime conference foe.
Just a classic battle.
Classic matchup. Actually, this is the first purple matchup that Northwestern's ever had in conference. So
yeah,
that's cool.
That's fun.
I feel like we're taking us back to those TCU games from our era, right?
Oh,
last purple I can remember.
Yeah, we haven't played Kansas State. Who else is like purpley? Anyway, we're talking about Washington. This is a Washington team that if you fire up the DVR and watch the national championship game, Michigan-Washington last year, and you think you want to see what Washington might be bringing to the table, don't even bother.
Won't do you any good.
Won't do you any good. I think the only thing that's the same is the uniforms. The band is probably the same. The mascot is the same. Aside from that, this is a completely different team. So how do you preview a team that not only you can't really get history on because it's completely different, and we don't have history with them because they're new to the conference?
Yeah,
I bid John, take us away.
I mean, so before we dive into the defense, a couple things. First of all, we're going to get into this later. I'm going to talk defense. Scuz's going to talk offense, and then we're going to have a discussion about this game. But Sam just said it, and we're going to circle back to it. How much stock you put in the uniforms a team is wearing probably is very much going to color the line of this game in the face of a lot of other things. And we're going to get to that later. But I want to circle back to what we talked about when we talked about the three incoming Pac-12 teams we don't play this year, right? Which is that we've kind of had to shake and bake a little bit of history with these teams because we don't have it the way we have it with all of these other teams. Well, if you remember, I dug back to 10 years of history when we were talking about the defenses of the other three teams, incoming from the Pac-12 that we've already previewed. But from a defensive standpoint, for any of you who maybe don't follow Pac-12 football or haven't long-term followed big-time college football in general, it is really important for you to know that of these four new entries to our conference, when it comes to defense, one of these things is really, really, really not like the other ones. There are the Oregon, USC, and UCLA defenses, and then there's the Washington defense. Over the past 10 years, each of the other three teams has had a scoring defense 11th or worse in the Pac-12 at least twice. Meanwhile, the worst Washington scoring defense in the past decade was 7th in the Pac-12, and that was last year. But check this out. In the past decade, USC, Oregon, and UCLA combined had 7 seasons in which they were top 3 in the conference in either scoring defense or total defense. Washington by itself did it 9 times. And if you're doing the math here, that's right. Last year, 2023, was the only year in the past decade in which Washington wasn't a top 3 defense in the Pac-12 in either points or yards given up. Washington is a defense school. Defense is their thing. They kick ass at defense. We talk a lot about culture. Teams can rise and fall, but some teams have been able to hammer a defensive mindset into their bedrock. Obviously, we are very familiar with this with a bunch of teams in this conference. Great coaching perpetuates it, recruits buy into it, and it persists. Culture, it's not speak. It's a real thing, right? Think Iowa, think Wisconsin, right? Historically, that's Washington, which is what makes what is currently going on at Washington on defense really, really strange. So, Kalen DeBoer had a ton of success at Washington, and that's why he's Alabama's head coach right now. But ironically, in the face of everything I just said, all of that success had very little to do with the defense. In fact, the UW defense got worse throughout DeBoer's entire tenure there. Washington had the number 4 scoring defense in the Pac-12 in 2021, the number 5 scoring defense in the conference in 2022, and the number 7 scoring defense in the Pac-12 in 2023. Remember when I say these numbers, 4th scoring, 5th scoring, 7th scoring, this was a defense that was never worse than 3rd in that category in the 7 years before DeBoer got there. DeBoer is an all-gas, no-brakes guy. And now Washington is replacing him with another all-gas, no-brakes guy, Jedd Fisch, whose entire coaching history is working with quarterbacks and calling offensive plays. And as his defensive coordinator, he hired Steve Belichick? Yes, it's that Belichick. It's Bill's son. But understand, this dude has never been a defensive coordinator at any level.
What's he been? Like, what's his background?
Patriots stuff for 12 years.
Patriot way, baby.
Yeah. He was a defensive assistant and a position coach for a team where his dad was the head coach. And now he has been given the keys to
Wait.
Yep.
That's always worked in the Big Ten before, right?
Oh, absolutely.
1,000%. Yes, completely.
Oh, man. No, that was just a drive-by of my heart, Scuzz, right there.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
But again, you have to factor in when
I was always catching some strays, right?
Yeah, right. Well, you have to factor in, too, that, like, again, you're like, well, yeah, okay, but it's the Patriots. Remember, this guy was just given the keys to one of the proudest defensive traditions in all of college football. And real talk, low-key, based on what we just talked about with DeBoer, a tradition that needs to get turned back in the right direction. And this was the move? Lordy, we talked recently about the decline and fall of the Spartan Empire defensively, and you can look at what they're doing, and you can look at what Washington is doing, and, like, a few parallels here. It's a heck of a delicate moment to be jumping to another conference, especially since Washington loses its clear 3 best defensive players across all 3 levels of the defense to the NFL. In defensive end, Braylon Trice, linebacker Edefon Olafosio, and safety Dominique Hampton. In addition, the Huskies' 4th best defensive player, all-conference corner Jabbar Muhammad, transferred out when DeBoer left. So this isn't a total gut rebuild, not like the one Scuzz is going to talk about, but it ain't far off. And now, here's where I have to step in and remind you that, as things currently stand, this is still Washington. They just played in the national championship game. They've been stockpiling defensive culture and defensive players for a long time. For example, UW still looks great at linebacker, with super experienced linebackers Carson Bruner and Alfonso Tupatala, and great at corner with Elijah Jackson, and excellent incoming transfer Ephesians Prysock, which, first of all, is an amazing name, Ephesians Prysock. But in addition to Prysock, UW absolutely mainlined defensive transfers from Arizona this year. And this ain't supposed to be Arizona defensively. It's supposed to be Washington defensively. And neither Arizona nor Washington had a good defense last year. So, Scuzz is no doubt about to talk about this major overhaul from the Washington we know on offense. All I know on this end is that this is a team that is going to be leaning on this incredible long-standing defensive culture to paper over a ton of major question marks in the short and long term on defense in terms of coaching, talent, and approach. And somewhere in this strange brew, I think that there might be a recipe for success for us on offense in Seattle.
Hey, John, you talked about DeBoer, but you know who else oversaw a defense that got worse and worse during his tenure?
Who's that?
Steve Belichick. 2019, when he took over play calling for the Patriots on defense, first in defensive rank on points and yards. 2020 was COVID; they got a lot worse. But we'll jump past that. We'll go to 2021, second and fourth. 2022, 11th and 8th. 2023, 15th in points, 7th in yards in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, if you go up to the Pacific Northwest and you look at our additions, no effing way does Dan Lanning make a hire like this.
Hey,
no way.
Never in a million years.
John, I got a question for you. When was the last time a position coach from the NFL came to be a defensive coordinator for a Big Ten team? How'd that work?
I like, my head is down at this point, so your drive-bys are not having an effect on me at any point. Okay, I've taken cover behind a brick wall, Sammy. But again, I'm just saying, factor everything I just said into your mind as Scuzz takes you through what he's about to take you through, because it's going to be just as spicy, I'm sure.
Yeah, so Scuzz, I mean, there's nothing even to tee up. This is a completely new offense. What do we know about it? Or what can we know about it?
It's really hard. It's really hard to figure out what this offense is going to be. I mean, we're not only entering the post-Penix playoff hangover era, we're entering the post-DeBoer era as well. And Washington returns a whopping 0 starters from last year's team on offense. So
It's truly incredible.
I did not bother going back multiple years because
I mean, how could you?
None of it matters. I mean, the pedigree John talked about at Washington on the defensive side. Offensively, I mean, they've had strong years. Like I think of what was it? Tuiasosopo back in the early aughts, and they had Myles Gaskin and Jake Browning back in 2017. Like they've had big offensive years, but the identity in Washington has always been on the defensive side of the ball. And then DeBoer really changed that when he came to town. I mean, Sark was supposed to revolutionize their offense when he was hired as head coach, and then obviously that did not go well. Chris Peterson was more of a defensive-minded guy, albeit one that oversaw explosive offenses at Boise State. But DeBoer was the first one that really supercharged this offense. And with him, it's not just that he's left; it's that Jedd Fisch comes in and is a completely different coach, and was not in the system, was not coaching underneath DeBoer or with DeBoer. This is very different than what I think a lot of people might on paper be thinking is a similar situation at Washington or at Michigan. Everybody left, the coaches knew, yada yada yada. But real talk, Moore coached 4 or 5 games last year as head coach. Had been part of Harbaugh's staff for multiple seasons, so that continuity of culture and of identity is going to be intact there in a way that, I mean, at Washington there's none on offense. So there are 3 guys that have meaningful starting experience coming from other programs and teams, and I guess that's an upside. But we're going to do our best here. We've got a new staff, a new scheme, and a new conference. So one of the guys with starting experience, and probably the name that everyone's talking about, is quarterback Will Rogers, who transferred in from Mississippi State. Rogers entered the portal after DeBoer left, but ended up recommitting to new coach Jedd Fisch once he was hired. Now, Rogers was incredible in 2022. He is the most prolific passer in Mississippi State history. Coming back into 2023, there was a lot of hope for him. He did not play well against SEC teams. He played LSU early in the year. If you remember, LSU in 2023 had a bad defense. They gave up a gajillion yards and points every week. He had his career low in yards, 103 in that game. The biggest factor in his discomfort last year seems to be that it was his first year outside of the Mike Leach air raid system. His usage was way down. I think he only had 17 attempts against Arizona. His yards per attempt just dropped off a cliff. He was really out of sorts, and then he got injured mid-season, and he was his non-throwing shoulder got hurt. He came back toward the end of the year, but it was a bad year by all accounts.
We should mention here, right, that during this entire mix, when he was hurt, a guy filling in for at least part of the time, right, was Mike Wright.
Yeah, it was Mike Wright. Yep. I have not gone bookmark, not bookmark, but note this, folks. We're going to be talking about the comparison of those two guys once we get to Northwestern. I haven't done that yet in terms of their how they performed at Mississippi State in 23. But regardless, the one other interesting factor on Rogers to me is that in 2022, Mississippi State played Arizona, and he absolutely smoked the Wildcats, who were coached by Jedd Fisch that year.
Remember, a ton of those guys on defense for that Arizona team now play for this Washington Husky football team.
What's in it? So, I think that's probably partly where some of the interest from Fisch and keeping Rogers on the team is from, as opposed to trying to get one of his former recruits or former guys. But the other interesting aspect is that Jedd Fisch, he's a pro style coach. We'll talk about him in a little bit here. But he runs a system that's much closer to the air raid than whatever Mississippi State was running last year. And so if I'm Rogers, I'm thinking, okay, this guy is, no gas, all brakes, as you said, John. Pass heavy. That's what he ran at Arizona. And sure, I'll stay here at Washington. Maybe he didn't get much interest elsewhere, but here are the two challenges he's going to have. Washington is literally starting over at both wide receiver and offensive line. Last year's receivers at Washington were bananas, and they're all gone. They return 2 of their top 11 pass catchers, representing a scant 190 of the 5,155 total receiving yards that this team put up last year. That is an unfathomable drop-off. The only meaningful addition to the room is Jeremiah Hunter. Now, this was Cal's leading wide receiver. He had 700 yards, 11 yards per catch. This is not exactly filling the void of the guys that were just destroying teams downfield and catching Michael Penix deep bombs. They are very excited about a big-framed guy, Denzel Boston, on the team. He's 6'4". He's going to be a matchup problem for a lot of defenses. Giles Jackson came over from Michigan a couple of years ago. He's played sparingly. There's a depth guy that came with Fisch from Arizona, but this is slim pickings, both on the stat sheet and when you look back at recruiting rankings and such. The tight end's a solid JUCO guy, and they seem to have some depth there, but this is all brand new. We get to play in week 4, y'all. A bigger concern is the offensive line. 5 new starters. 4 true or redshirt freshmen in the projected 2 deep. Only 2 seniors.
Wow.
They added a career backup transfer from Ohio State at right guard, and they have some talent on paper at center and left guard. So the middle of the line might be okay, but Rogers averaged negative 0.4 yards per carry last year. And he might be running slowly for his life anytime this team is in third and medium or longer.
I direct you again to the Las Vegas Bowl, where we just obliterated a patchwork O-line of guys who didn't have experience. And that was another good Pac-12 team.
Yeah, it's not like offensive line is a group that needs continuity.
Yeah, so there's that. And then there's the talent. The tackles don't look very talented. So by comparison, Noah Fafita, who was the quarterback at Arizona last year in Fisch's system, was awesome, put up gaudy stats, etc. He was similarly statuesque and did not run at all. I think he similarly, averaged negative 3/4 a yard or something like that. But he had an NFL caliber left tackle who went in the first round of the draft and a very talented, tenured senior offensive line overall. This is not the situation facing Washington this fall. So despite the presence of Rogers and Jedd Fisch, who prefers this really pass-heavy scheme, this portends that Washington's strengths are likely to be on the ground. So in
You're
addition,
going to run a pass-heavy scheme with a greenhorn O-line?
no, but that's what I'm saying is that if they're smart, they're going to figure out how to do it differently. Because the strength of their line on paper is the guards in the center. And their running back situation is decent. This is the other former starter / impact transfer. That's Jonah Coleman, who started for Fish in Arizona last year. He gained 900 yards, like close to 7 yards per carry. But that was a pass to set up the run kind of team with lots of deep shots, great separation by the receivers, a good quarterback in Fafita. So this is where Washington becomes simply fascinating, because it is extremely difficult to peg the type of coach that Jedd Fisch is. This dude has coached everywhere, and rarely for long. So in his 25-year coaching career, he has changed jobs every year or two.
Wow.
Only as the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator and as head coach at Arizona did he stay in one place for more than 3 seasons. In 25 years. This isn't a knock on him, mind you. It just means he's coached for just about every type of system and situation you can imagine in college and the pros. He's coached for both Harbaugh brothers, Pete Carroll, Sean McVay, Jim Mora Jr., Mike Shanahan, and in his last stop before Arizona, he was the QB's coach for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. That's where the connection to Steve Belichick likely was formed. So in his favor, this is an extremely experienced NFL-style coach who should be able to adapt to his situation. I think he's most similar in his offensive mindset to Sean McVay. He prefers a really creative, aggressive, pass-first offense. He famously did not do very well at Michigan under Harbaugh, I might add. So Rodgers as an air raid quarterback is a great fit for his system and what he wants to do. But he's got a super green college offensive line with deficient talent at the tackle position, underwhelming receivers, and a transition into an excellent defensive conference. I really struggle with how most previews are just penciling in Fish's Arizona offense this year. They're like, oh, he did great at Arizona. Oh, he's got this air raid QB. I think he's going to have a bit of a job getting the most out of this team in year one, not because of the quarterback, but because of everyone surrounding him. And their success is going to depend immensely on his ability to adjust his approach and lean on the running game as the primary offensive weapon, because that's where the strength of this team is. It's crystal clear on paper. Whether they can actually pull that off and execute it is a gigantic question mark.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. So let's go through the schedule here.
Can I say
Yeah.
two things before you get into it?
Sure.
Of the schedule, Sam? First of all, holy shit. and second of all, can I please have you hit pause right when you get to October 12th?
All right.
But take it away.
So they open up. All right. They open up with Weber State and Eastern Michigan, and then they continue their rivalry with Washington State. You see, folks, it is possible to leave a conference and keep a long-term rivalry. Here you go. Then we come a calling on September 21st. They're at Rutgers, home for Michigan, at Iowa. Then they get a bye week.
Hit a pause right here at their bye week. I'm looking at that and being like, damn, this schedule sucks. They have to play the Apple Cup, then Northwestern, then at Rutgers, then Michigan, then Iowa. Well, at least after this point, it must turn in the right direction.
Sure.
These poor bastards.
They get a bye week. They go to Indiana. They're home for USC. Then they go cross-country to Penn State, home for UCLA. Then they get a bye week to rest up for Oregon.
I mean, oh my God. I'm like, the first half of their schedule sucks. They have to go at Rutgers. I mean, we're going to get into it. We feel pretty good about our chances. They have their rivalry. They have the Apple Cup, right? A game after, with all of that conference bad blood mixed in. Again, at Rutgers. Michigan, they're at Iowa. And you can argue this is the good half of their schedule. I mean, Lord have mercy. At Penn State and at Oregon in the span of 3 games, and USC. I mean, wow. For everything we just talked about with all the uncertainty on this team, this wood chipper, I mean, holy cow.
Washington State, for what it's worth, has got 6 returners on offense. Not much at the quarterback position, though. I mean, but a really strong offensive line, some talent at wide out, a coach in their 4th year. They're going to be foaming at the mouth for this game, and we get to play Washington the week after.
Yeah. I mean, again, truly, I'm there was part of me that's there's a little coming after the Apple Cup and ahead of this sneaky tough game for them on the road at Rutgers. Then I'm looking, I'm they don't get any weeks off. This schedule just sucks, front to back. I mean, congrats on Weber State and Eastern Michigan. After that, man, I mean, again, they're going to be beat up by the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, that's their problem. I have to say though, in terms of our game, I mean, let's put it this way: this is going to be a spicy game that I think a lot of people maybe don't realize.
I absolutely love that this is the team we got from the Pac-12 on our schedule.
For sure.
I mean, talk about an amazing time to catch Washington. It's funny because coming off of last season, just in the offseason amongst ourselves, we were talking about oh my God, we have to open conference season against the team that finished 2nd in the country. And John, you were on the Will Rogers stuff from the get-go of this amazing SEC quarterback, but they got bupkis.
Yeah.
In this room. And I forgot to include this in the preview, but I did look it up. So Jedd Fisch, now when he took over Arizona, I mean, it was bottom of the barrel, right? Went 1-11 year 1, 5-7 year 2. It took him 3 years, 3 complete years. And I will note that first year, all the articles about Jedd Fisch going into 2021 with Arizona were, he's got this amazing air raid quarterback that he's pulling in that he, stole from somewhere else in Gunnar Cruz. This is going to be crazy. Nah, 1-11 did not work. So it takes time. You can plug and play when you've got pieces, when you've got some foundation, when you've got a tenured team, seniors, etc. They don't even have that.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other comp I can think of is Colorado last year, who turned over the entire roster. This is similar. I mean, in a different vein, but
that's different though, because they brought in 5 superstars from, I mean, granted from FCS, but this is a ton of, at least on offense.
Yeah.
An entire roster that's never played together on offense with a brand new coach and a brand new scheme, playing defenses they've never played before, having to travel more than one time zone.
Several times.
Let's look at our game and let's start by stacking all the presumed advantages for Washington in this game, right? First of all, obvious one, they're at home. But then we talked about it, the logo on the uniform, right? I mean, they're Washington. But behind that, they have, I mean, let's call it it is. A far superior tradition, right?
How does that matter, though? How does that matter with the new coach?
No. So here's, bear with me, because let's stack what they've got, right? They've got, on a year-to-year basis, whether through the portal or recruiting, a clear advantage over Northwestern.
Sure.
If you were to go through and you count up all the stars.
Well, and especially at quarterback, because Will Rogers is a decorated QB whose experience knows how to win games.
Exactly. They ought to also have a vastly superior quarterback, okay? That's a bunch of stuff. The clear quarterback advantage, home team, and all the pedigree of a power program that literally played in the national championship last year. Here's what we have. Bigger stars at almost every notable position. You might be rolling your eyes. No. Offensive line, Caleb Tiernan, better than any offensive lineman they have. We have clearly the stars at wide receiver, Henning and Kurtz, that's bigger than any established receiver they have. Running back. We have bigger established running backs than they have in Porter and Hyman. And we definitely have the best defensive player, Xander Mueller.
Can I go back to wide receiver? Not only do we have the bigger stars, like both teams feature a guy that transferred from Michigan 2 years ago, and ours is like light years beyond theirs.
Yeah. And in terms of team chemistry, it's not even close. Keep in mind, remember, like, our defensive line returns almost its entire 3 deep that just eviscerated Utah in a bowl game. And we talked about this before, but it's like the hey but with that was, yeah, but that was a young green offensive line. I direct you to the University of Washington offensive line, right? And behind all them, the best defensive player who will be playing in this game, okay? Now, yeah, they have a ton of recruiting stars and a ton of talent, but we also kind of probably have the better coaches in this game too.
I don't know about that.
I mean Fish is very decorated and well traveled.
So on the offensive side, this is going to be fascinating. You are pitting a bunch of guys that were in the NFL because the OC is Brandon Carroll. I assume
that's Pete
Carroll's kid. Yeah, because he was the OC at Arizona the last 3 years, and the prior 6 was with Seattle. So that's Pete Carroll's kid. Fish has been, with the exception of his time in Arizona and like 1 or 2 other years, has been an NFL assistant almost his entire career. So this is kind of like NFL coaching pedigree versus FCS coaching pedigree.
Right,
and
exactly. It's more like a fascinating experiment.
I'll be honest. I'll take the guys that have been stacking natties in the FCS.
Right,
but
winning Coach of the Year awards.
Yeah, but it is also like I don't want to discount Fish has started over and picked up in a new place a zillion times at this point. So
right,
and this is true. Not new hat for him.
Yes.
Right, like let me phrase it this way, because any Washington fans that are listening to this are probably pissed off as hell right now.
Welcome to the Big Ten, boys.
I'll take our guys. That's the way I would phrase it. I like our coaches in this one, and I like the guys that we're riding with. And again, am I saying we have a clear advantage in this game? No, but I just stacked a bunch of stuff on our side versus a bunch of stuff on their side, and I'm guessing that the line is not going to be favorable to us in any way, shape, or form in this game.
Oh, for sure,
definitely not.
And again, so throw the disrespect card right onto the pile in terms of things that favor our side and the way that you've seen this team do it just against, let's just take Utah just by itself.
Yeah.
The amount of times we've seen Utah, this team gets totally disrespected against Utah and what happened in those games.
Well, if I'm right about this offense and where their strengths lie, even if Washington has kind of figured that factor out, like, our front 7 is the strength of our defense, and so I mean, strength on that side of the ball. If they're trying to gash us with the run, we're going to be ready for that. We're going to be prepared for that. We've talked on the other 3 previews. Well, I guess we didn't say it so much on Oregon because I don't know that it matters for Oregon. But we talked on the other 2 previews. Like, Pac-12 defenses ain't the cream of the crop, y'all. Look at what happened to Washington's offense when they played Michigan. Now, Michigan had a absolutely lights out, incredible, amazing defense last year. But Washington, much like USC, struggles in those really physical matchups. Not as much on the defensive side like USC does, but like on their offense struggled when teams got physical with them. And I just our game, just because of the uncertainty we have at quarterback, I think all of us we're always optimistic when it comes to Northwestern, and we're looking at the success that the team had last year. We're looking at, frankly, what is a stronger coaching staff, but there's plenty of change in our team. There's plenty of erosion of the depth chart that's, come through the last couple of years. We haven't seen bananas recruiting in a while at Northwestern. So there's holes in the Northwestern point of view. So this game should probably be a relative toss up when you factor all that together. The line's going to be seven,
And-
seven and
and
a
that's the
half,
thing.
8, and that's
Vegas and the nation is not going to treat it as a
Yeah.
toss-up.
No.
And that's
Right.
it.
No.
And that's I couldn't love the situation for us anymore.
Well, and I think again, the general previews around Washington are wash, rinse, repeat. Like, yeah, they won't be the explosive, go to the playoff type team last year, but hey, Jed Fish and they got a QB, like it's going to be great, and this team might lose 8 games.
Yeah. Don't
So,
Real talk.
So let's talk about that. I mean, we're the first game in conference, but like you keep going down the conference schedule. I mean, at Rutgers is no joke. Michigan, there's a lot of turnover there, but I mean, it's still the defending national champions. I mean, all eyes are going to be on the national championship rematch. At Iowa, Southern Cal, at Penn State. Like, they're at Penn State, they're at Oregon, they're at Iowa,
They're at Rutgers.
they're at Rutgers.
Can they
Yeah.
beat Rutgers?
I look at this and I'm like, if I'm charitable, I mean, first of all, I'm not giving them us. I'm taking that as a lot. I'm taking that as a Northwestern win. So if I give them a 3-1 start, then let's say I give them a split over Rutgers and Michigan. So now they're 4-2.
Ooh, that's generous.
That is
I'll give 'em-
extremely generous, Joe.
I'll give them Iowa. I'll give them Indiana.
I'll,
They're 6-2.
I'll give them Iowa before I give them Rutgers.
And then, but I mean, let's say they're 6-2 at this point, right? I still have them losing at least 2 of the next 4 games. In which point, that's 8-4, and that's me being quite charitable to them on this schedule to get them to 8 wins.
I'll be uncharitable. Lose the Apple Cup, lose to us, lose to what's going to be a good Rutgers team, as we've talked about. I mean, Michigan is 100 times more experienced and prepared and ready to rebuild coming off of last year than Washington is on October 5th. At Iowa is really hard. I think, beating Indiana does not look like that tough of an equation. USC has got a lot of changes, but they seem a lot more solid and put together than Washington right now. At Penn State, no effing way.
Nope.
They could probably beat UCLA, and then at Oregon is laughable. I mean, talk about a team that's going to be out for blood. So, I mean, that's 8 losses. That's 4-8.
USC, like when I look at that USC game, I'm like, USC hired DeAnton Lynn as their defensive coordinator, and Washington hired Steve Belichick, and I'm like, I mean, if you're looking for differentiators, man, oh man, there you go. So I mean, yeah, I mean, like this could totally go south for them. Now, if you're a Northwestern fan, gird your loins because Will Rogers is going to throw for 800 yards in the first 2 games of their season.
Yeah, he is.
And then it's going to be like, oh, okay, like everyone's going to be like, oh, this offense, they got it all figured out. Just wait.
You're 100% accurate.
Their tough stuff is going to come. Starting with the Apple Cup and then leading right into us.
But I think it's really important to note, like last year, the receivers on this team, Rome Odunze,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
first round pick
pick
for the Bears. Jalen McMillan was a draft pick. Dylan Johnson, the running back, was a draft pick. Like all these superstars that powered their team last year are gone.
Yep.
And
again, on defense, they're their best player at every level of the field on defense, and that's the more experienced group they're bringing back.
There is not a single guy in their receiver room who's a top flight recruit in terms of recruiting ranking. Nobody who's listed in like the top 50 amongst their position in their class. I'm sorry, one guy who's a redshirt freshman listed, Rashid Williams listed like down pretty far down the depth chart, most because he's a redshirt freshman. They have, their best wide receiver recruit coming in this year. He's 5'10". He's like the 60th best guy in the class. Like there is, this is night and day to what they were over the last 2 years.
Now let's just to be clear, we're not just completely flat out saying this is a guaranteed win for us.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Heck no. But I mean, it feels like a toss-up.
But this is not going to look like or feel like the defending national runner-up.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's my biggest point is that this is so in my mind, this is a 6-6 football team. Now, which 6 we fall into is up in the air. That's why I kind of pegged I think our game is a bit of a toss up. Probably advantage them being in Seattle.
Sure,
that's a tough place to play, etc. Not Seattle, but being at their home stadium, right? It's a tough place to play. It's super loud, all that sort of shit.
Seattle.
Right?
I mean, it's not the Seahawks stadium, but like their stadium, they've got a good home field advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So
although you have to factor into that home field advantage that Jay Sharman's bringing the Sailgate out to Seattle this year.
Straight.
So that's a great equalizer.
So again, slight advantage to them on that front, but the broader point is I think people are looking at this name on our schedule and are worried about. I am 5 times more concerned about playing Miami of Ohio than I am Washington.
Yeah. I mean, long term, Washington's going to be a really good football team.
Yes.
Like in this conference.
Yeah.
But now in this game, maybe not.
Anything else to mention before we get out of here?
Spicy one, this one. This was one of those ones we've all had circled for a while, and we are all sure going to have it circled when we get to it in mid-September.
This one, like digging into this was kind of like peeling an onion. I felt like every couple steps I took, I was like, oh shit,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and leave it there. Head to our website, westlawnpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Twitter. Find us on Instagram. Find us on YouTube at Westlaw Pirates. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Help get the word out on that platform. And you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us on the west side of Ryan Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Skasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.